Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I hope you've all got your cuppa for Elevenses with CEC. Fabulous. Just to give you a bit of context of why we're doing this. So my name's Rachael Brown and I'm part of the team at Creative Entrepreneurs Club and the Future Economy Company. And at the beginning of March, it was very clear to us that things needed to change for the benefit of the community that we are privileged to serve. So we support the creative and social entrepreneurs of Scotland, and we do it in such a way that we hope enables them to flourish and be successful. Because of the situation we're in with COVID, a huge amount of creative entrepreneurs that we engage with and work with found that their income was dropping off a cliff, found that their opportunities had stopped, found that a whole range of the plan that they had going forward was not something they were going to be able to realise. And the community that we support isn't driven by success or money as such, as a defining characteristic, but certainly driven by meaning. And we saw that the meaning started to kind of be pulled away from people in terms of the jobs and the work that they do. So we turned around very quickly opportunities, working alongside amazing partners like Social Investment Scotland, to create content that was really worthwhile and the right opportunity for the new marketplace. Over the last 5 weeks, we have also seen that a whole range of different content has been flooding through our airwaves. And I don't know about you guys, but I am zoomed out of my nut. I am done almost with Zoom calls. Come tea time of any night of the week, I am exhausted, and much more exhausted than I would normally be running around every day, going to meetings and coming from meetings. But what we realised, and I mean this generously, that the content was variable, and there was not a lot of people listening to what really was needed. Content shouldn't be about passing links to other websites or supporting other people to fill in forms. There is absolute necessary to share information at the moment, and everybody's doing that in abundance. But what we really need to do is connect with each other and gather together. So we're starting these small Elevenses groups, and we're going to be here at 11 o'clock every Wednesday with fabulous people to chat. We will finish at 12, and we hope that we give something that's interesting, that's uplifting, that is a little bit different. Next week, amidst the chaos, we're going to be interviewing our children. So Medea and I have children, and Katie, our other colleague. So between us, we have 6 children. We're all working mothers. We are all leaders. We all juggle a multiple of different things on a daily basis, and homeschooling and trying to really make an impact to the community that we love is what we do on a daily basis. And it feels like it's 16 hours a day at the moment. So we thought, who best to ask about the current situation than our children, who live with 3 entrepreneurial women who are all doing a whole range of different things, and we will see. I mean, perfectly executed at the moment by Lockie, who's with Medea, who's doing an art class as we speak, as we're involved in this chat. So that's why we're here. That's the context. Please feel free to join us every week. We start small, we might get big, we might stay small, we don't care. This isn't a numbers game for us. This is about quality of conversation and quality of impact, and that's why these recordings are these sessions have been recorded. With lots of feedback saying I'd love to join you, but I'm not sure I'm ready yet, and that's something that's coming through for all of the work that we do, because it's about the pace. People are just taking this all at different times and different pace. A lot of people are still grieving, and we're going to talk a bit about that today. So I am absolutely thrilled to be joined by Gail. I will let Gail do her own introductions, but just from my own point of view, I am knackered, absolutely shattered. I am done. I have got a whole range of chores going on behind me. I've got people getting homeschooled. My little boy tried to set fire to something yesterday. I mean, the whole thing is going on. At the same time, I've got some bread proving on a radiator somewhere. Do you know, it's just everything. Government announcements around what's possible for our creative community. I need to get onto that. We've got content to prepare for tomorrow. It's just absolutely non-stop. And I am exhausted, which is why Gail is the perfect person to have
no
our
pressure.
first session to chat us all the way through. Gail, what's going on? What's happening?
I love that, just a small thing. And 46 minutes to answer the question. So the reason that is a good question is I'm Reverend Gail Love-Schock. So I'm an Interfaith Minister, which means I provide essentially spiritual counselling support for people of all faiths and no faiths. And I am probably one of a handful of people who's feeling extraordinarily vibrant, whose business is growing, and who's been working online for almost 7 years. So what everybody is getting used to is normal as well. So and then the other side of that is that I'm also a mentor. So I will work with people basically to help them totally bin their bullshit. So what is in the way of you and your peace? What is in the way of you and your business idea? What is in the way of you creating? Because we're either practicing the presence of something. So right now we're seeing a fantastic practice of exhaustion. People are great. Or we're seeing a practice of something else, which could be peace, vibrancy, pivoting, adaptation, flexibility, which is also kind of this idea of advocating for the best self and bringing, kind of reclaiming our choices. And instead of this idea, this false myth of when this is over, or when we get around the corner, or, I'm going to start that when the opportunity is now. So there's a lot to discuss in that, and indeed there is also a collective grief which we'll talk more about too, particularly related to coronavirus in itself because of how it affects the body. So it's moving into the diaphragm, it's moving into the lungs, it's moving into the throat, it's moving into the face. So from a spiritual lineage point of view, it's taking breath, it's sitting in the house of grief, the lungs, it's sitting in the fear belt, the diaphragm, and it's sitting in the face, communication. So from that point of view, I find it really, really interesting. And then ultimately what I'm doing is co-creating with other people to alleviate some of that pressure that is being felt, so that this is the new world that quite a lot of people asked for, including myself. I was definitely one of those people saying, we can't go on like this, something has to change, there has to be a new way. Eckhart Tolle wrote A New Earth 11 years ago. There's all these amazing things that are happening. And so today I sort of sit thinking, well, it just didn't perhaps show up the way that I thought it was going to, but it has shown up. So that's a kind of nutshell of where I'm at.
Yeah, when we first chatted the other week, I was totally fascinated of your background and what's led you here. And I think that your story around all of that is more relevant than ever before, because it's been a complete circle. Dropped in, you're like, yeah, Lamborghini, Formula One, did all that stuff. Now and I was like, what? Back what are you talking about? So you want to tell us about your journey, because lots of people are going through extreme anxiety and excitement at the same time about what's possible for their own journeys.
Yeah.
And you did you were ahead of us. You were a trend spotter.
Thank you. I'll take that. Thank you.
Moving around.
Yeah, that's there is an element of truth to that. So I originally trained as an actor and a dancer, so that was my first forte, and then I worked for a long time in kind of multi-million dollar fundraising, and that's what I was doing for third sector for charities. Then I was working in cultural development infrastructure, so essentially if new buildings went up, houses, homes, etc., then we had to make sure there was really basic provision: theatre, swimming pool, cinema. Then I was a producer for London 2012, so co-created a lot of the torch relay around the southeast and the southwest of England and pulling across from Europe. Lots of money, lots of people, lots of government, lots of strangeness. Then we basically all fell out of there, just having no idea what to do, because we literally kept this tiny flame alive for months, and there's a whole thing around that which really affects you psychologically. when you're responsible for the Olympic flame, it's a very weird thing. Came out of there, became a luxury producer because of the level of clientele and the ultimately what I was managing. So I was moving Lamborghini from Geneva to Dubai, opening Lamborghini showrooms in Abu Dhabi, opening 5-star hotels, working with people like Graf Diamonds, also producing fashion, London Fashion Week, big high end, getting supermodels out of bathrooms, eating McDonald's, all that weird stuff that happens. Now, at the same time, I was noticing more and more that I was being brought into decision-making rooms or leadership rooms because of what I could we would call pick up or get a sense of, or I had an instinct for what was needed or where people were, if a deal was going to land, if a deal wasn't going to land, what to negotiate. Again, from a spiritual language, we might talk about it as being empathetic or intuitive or open to the room. And then I started to train, which is a very, very usual way to go through things like learning Reiki, meditation, yoga, all the kind of holistic elements to try and decompress from a lot of the stress that these environments can create as well, especially when you're deadline orientated and addicted to destination, which is also what we're seeing a kickback against, because now nobody knows what that destination is. So what we all think we were working towards in terms of productivity, that isn't working anymore, essentially. Then I trained as a happiness coach specifically, and because I've basically always been happy and think it's our birthright above all things else. So and which will be some people's cup of tea and won't be others, but there's 8 billion of us on the planet, so I'm good in the percentage that works in my favor, no qualms. And then I was leading retreats, and I was again working more holistically, again trying to suss out where we could bring things like everyday ritual, everyday ceremony, even how you sit down and have a cup of tea, how you get ready, how you bathe, are you connected to your body, are you disconnected? And again, a lot of the anxiety that we're seeing at the minute is as a result of actually our relationships to ourselves and to those around us have, through no fault of our own, have become quite surface, and now we've been forced into a pocket of compressed time together, where you might realize actually that you're not even sure about really simple things like shower gel, the way you like your tea, or indeed if you like the people that are in your life. So there's quite a lot of that was going on. And then very unexpectedly, I trained as an Interfaith Minister a few years ago. It's not what I thought was going to happen, but it made total sense, because when I was a kid, I used to make up songs about Jesus, and by the time I was 7, I wanted to be Jewish, and I was really annoyed as a Glaswegian child that my family didn't know any Jewish people, and I just thought that they were the coolest people on the planet. So now my life is full of essentially what we call hatched, matched and dispatched as well. So baby blessings, marriages, all of which are on hold, and a lot of end of life and a lot of death, and I'm an ambassador for Marie Curie. So for me, the combination of that is if we can live a good life, we can also experience a good death. And then that means that we feel less of the grief that potentially we're feeling. Because again, a lot of what's in the zeitgeist is this concept of fear of the end, ultimately. Because again, there might be a fear that we haven't actually lived our lives, we've lived somebody else's. And so, I was then and as I say, I've been working online. I have clients all over the world. I do one-to-one work. I work with in deep dive mentorships for 12 months, 2 years with people. I work with a lot of industry leaders, politicians, A-listers, but I also work with just everybody in between there as well. Teach a lot online, and actually, in amongst all of this, launched a course called Prosperity Unlocked, which is about everyday wealth in every single area, and the response to it was miraculous. So I think this is also why I would say we're at a real point of opportunity, co-creation and harmonizing, as long as the idea comes from within you, and we'll talk about that more as well. But if it's like somebody's telling you to do something, it will probably be flat. But if it's something that's coming from within you and you really feel like it's an idea that you think, hang on a minute, this isn't leaving me alone, just go with that ultimately, and enjoy that, and see where it takes you. But yeah, as I say, and then on a Wednesday night, I also have a free gathering, which is essentially I'm inviting you to an online space called Sanctuary. and it's up to an hour. It's meditation, it's conversation. I love that everybody's writing that down. That's amazing, thank you. Like, when does that start? Send us the link. And so that is just a space where we will meditate, and I may bring some form of, it might be a poem, it might be something I've read. Tonight, for example, we will talk about more of what it means to either be, be present to something or be ignoring something. And again, that community is growing and growing, and it's worldwide. So that is me being in service, but not being in servitude. So that's a pretty swift run through how I've got to here.
It's fascinating, Gail. It's so fascinating, and I think there's kind of 3 points, or there's 3 comments I want to pick up on, because we've seen a lot. I mean, myself and colleagues have spoken a lot to people over the last 4 weeks. I'm having hundreds and hundreds of conversations with people who just need space and time. And there's sort of 3 bits that were fascinating for me, talking about people's instinct, talking about people's ability to understand the emotion that they're going through at that time, and also the part about the idea of if the desire is within you, how do you take that forward? Because we've been trained up until this point to work and live separately and in particular ways. So, before it would be so unheard of. I say before, there's a before and an after, isn't there? And COVID's been around for like 20 seconds. Before COVID,
March 23rd, yeah.
March 23rd. I was doing Brexit before that. Gosh, 2020 was not that great, actually, to begin with. But it would have been the best year yet, according to everybody else. If COVID hadn't happened, 2020 was going to be the best year yet. So some of the language is just so, we're not in lockdown. I refuse to use that phrase. I've used to be locked down anywhere. It's just not something that comes naturally to me.
Well, you were not. It's interesting, isn't it? Because actually it's incarceration language. And so again, it's this really interesting thing. And we spoke about this the other day as well, that one of the other parts to this is personal privilege and personal preference. I did it myself when I went food shopping, and they didn't have my tea bags that I liked. And I was like, well, my God, what am I going to do? Having it breaking out of the emotional scale, which we'll talk about when we're talking about anxiety. But then I was just like, what a fantastic opportunity to try something else, Gail. Like, Jesus, just pick up another box. Check yourself. What do you think's happening here? And so there's a lot of incarceration language. There's a lot of colonized language. There's a lot of war language that's happening. So I'm referring to it as independent retreat, it just is, and I didn't have to travel anywhere to experience that. But again, that's very much a mindset choice. So I'm actively doing that. And with the, a lot of what I'm talking to clients and people about is the emotional scale and how we can move through that. And in the resources on the CEC website, you can go and learn a bit more about that as well. There's a couple of videos in there and a couple of really great meditations from me. But again, this idea that we can be, if we think of it like a piano, we can be at that scale that might be disconnection, depression, discombobulation, but actually worry is better than depression, doubt is better than worry, anger actually is better than any of those things. So again, we think we have to make this massive leap from not knowing to knowing. But what I'm always encouraging when I'm coaching, mentoring, or in spiritual counseling is just choose a better feeling thought. I'm not saying choose the best feeling thought. I'm inviting people to really just to be aware of what the emotion is. And just to observe, be witness to, that's interesting. I am feeling that, again, checking, am I breathing? Nobody's breathing. A collective breath is a massive area of disturbance globally. It's really, really interesting what's happening. Again, you watch a baby breathe, it's this beautiful, gorgeous belly, diaphragm, everything moves, up and down. You watch an adult breathe, they're probably breathing from, their collarbones and then wondering why they can't make decisions or they're feeling anxious. So also get the breath down into the you know, into the tummy, into the belly. And yeah, and absolutely with anxiety, there's almost an element of inner critic to that, but the you know, which is, again, should I trust myself? Should I do this? Is this the time? This is bonkers. I don't know what's happening with this. But actually the flip side of the inner critic is what's known as the inner being. So then the inner being is like, you know, that we've had this idea, you've had this ding moment, you've had that, you're staring out of a window, you're thinking, oh, that's interesting. You're moving from a place of what I refer to as inspired action. So there is this real art of allowing, and there's also this wonderful art of waiting, as one of my teachers calls it, like the ancient art of waiting, which is being lazy, which again is counterintuitive in a world where we've been trained to be productive. It's like, you know, a lot of my clients, I'll be saying to them, what's the laziest way you can create that? You know, like, what's the most peaceful way you can create that? What's the most, you know, interesting, artistic, rewarding, kind of juicy way that you can make that thing happen? As in, stop efforting. You know, and that's what we saw straight away. You know, in March, we just saw shitloads of coaches, mentors, people go immediately into productivity and efforting, and a fortnight later, bang, you know, just no energy, nothing, like must push, all kind of coming from what I would talk about is the jaw, all coming from the head. And so for me, again, what I'm interested in is dropping people out of the head into the heart and into the third center that's called the hara. This is where the instinct lives. This is where the inner being lives. So again, if you notice yourselves just thinking, oh, how do I get my head around this? You could also instead ask, oh, well, what do I feel about this? Or how do I get my heart around this? Or what does my gut say? So there is the thinking, there is the knowing, and there is the feeling. We will all predominantly lead from one center. And again, from a mindset point of view, just allow yourself to run from all of those centers. 3 green lights, that's kind of what we're looking for. And again, things will get easier and easier and simpler, and we have a huge opportunity to advocate for that.
So one of the things that's been really fascinating for me is the language that we're using around our self-care and how we translate that into business environments, because it's not different. It's not different, especially when you're responsible for people and you're leading something. There's no difference there. And I love the way they talked about instinct. And, you know, a few of you have heard me say this before. As a female leader, I get very frustrated because I'm often talked about as being, Rachel's dead emotional, she's dead passionate. Like, I make these decisions just out of Scarlett O'Hara style passion, whipping around the place in my ball gown, which is probably not unusual, but that, you know,
I'm here for that.
I mean, probably, most definitely, but it's grounded in something. It's grounded in, you know, everything I've done up until this point in my life has got me ready for this. I mean, Medea was talking about this earlier on, that, you know, been building resilience your whole life. And you've been building up it, and it's really whether you've been open to it or not. And some of the people that I've been speaking to the last few weeks who are handling this the best are the ones who have learned from all of their experiences rather than just gliding through the experiences. When you're supporting people who are making all of these life, being more life aware into business, because this is something that the creative industries, you know, God love them, but the creative industries do self-care in such a crappy fashion. And it's recorded publicly and will be on the site that I advocate and support all day long. But the self-care in the creative industries is a shocker. Need going, and there's this kind of balance between people being really positive and adventurous and have great ideas, and this crippling self-doubt, and somewhere in the middle they kind of clash often, but they don't give themselves enough time and space. So you've got people that are incredibly creative and incredibly uncreative in the same space all of the time. So for us, trying to get them to flourish in their business environment, especially when they need to acknowledge some of this stuff, is really quite tough, and it takes time, but it's brilliant when they do, when you can see them go, oh, how do you do that? I'm curious as to what the conversations you have.
For me, it's quite layered, and I think it's also quite a lot of sort of busting myths as well. So there's, I think people think that self-care is something much more complicated than it is. And, we talk about the basics, but actually they're essentials. Drinking water, getting outside, moving, getting a good quality of sleep, even if your sleep is interrupted. And again, there is a meditation and the resource for that actually, at this time, what's really interesting is you might also get floods of creativity at like 2 a.m, or 5, or all these different points, but actually your body is getting what it needs all the time. Yes, and there's a lot of stuff being processed in dream world as well. I am inundated with dream interpretation requests, which is wonderful, because actually what it means is people are really resting. So then things that are apparent are coming through. So it's really, really just interesting to sit with a cup of tea in the morning and be like, well, that dream last night, that showed me this, that showed me that. Oh yes, and sometimes I do visit. In fact, I frequently visit other people in dreams as well, I know. But one of the things in terms of those essentials being taken care of, which by the way also includes things like going for a pee when you need it. I do that. Like, why? I'll just wait. Just take care of your bathroom breaks, for the love of God. Like saying to be like, and again, there's something here about moving away from destination addiction, understanding it will never all be done. If it is all done, congratulations, I will be writing your eulogy. That's what's going to happen. If you've got everything done that you want to do in your entire life, it's very likely, that you'll complete. So there's this idea that we think we have to manifest, co-create. And once we're over there, and once we're at that destination, and once this is kicked in, then we'll all be able to calm down and chill out and just like reap the benefits. Whereas that's not true, because we're leading edge co-creators. So we're always co-creating. So when I'm working with people, I want to find out, again, what they think their idea is. I want to find out what their heart, what they feel their idea is. And I want to get into their gut, what they trust their idea is. And then I want to find out whose idea is it? Is it theirs? Is it someone else's? Are they responding to things that they're seeing out there? Again, are you in competition mindset and thinking, or are you in compassion mindset and co-creating? Are you coming at this from a place of actually, are you a creative and an entrepreneur? Or in fact, do you have a set of skills which are just astronomically more employable in a traditional 9-to-5 experience as well? I often have clients who actually return to work, as it were, as in they go back into a job, because their skills, the time and the space they've had to come out and create and try something, has led them to realize that they're a leader of a very particular kind, or they have a set of skills, and actually what they need is a different environment, that they actually might not thrive in independent retreat, as we're calling it, and they may want to move things along. I want to know what the sort of, like, if I was thinking about Rachael version 2.0, so if you're thinking, right, this is great now, but actually there's a version of me somewhere in the future who is doing this, this, and this, I also want to work with a person to embody what that is, to embody that experience right now. So again, we're not chasing it, but we're sort of borrowing from the future, which is really powerful and very, very useful. And I also play or give a lot of processes and give a lot of games to people as well that are around their imagination, because actually, interestingly, one of the things is we often get quite limited in our imagination because we think it has to be a certain way. Whereas I want people to go beyond. I want it to be so enormous that, I don't know, they're thinking about a pretend £10,000 check that they're going to buy a racehorse with today. Why? Who cares why? Let's see where it leads them, So again, I really want to bring all that space and that area into them. And at the same time, they will also have learned how to look after themselves from particular people. So one of the questions I'm also asking clients is, who taught you to think? Who taught you to feel? Who taught you to know? Now, you may or may not be able to answer them, but if you can sit with it as an inquiry, as a meditation, and you suddenly realize you might not have thought a single thought that was yours in your entire life, that can be quite confronting. You might realize every heart decision and relationship decision you've ever made has been modeled on somebody else that you were trying to people please. but actually people pleasing is just a really unfortunate way that we have been trained to not listen to our gut and our instinct, because instead of talking to the people we really admire and who really inspire us and saying, my God, it's amazing, look at you, you got there, I can too, what I'll start to do is behave in a way so that that person likes me and kind of takes me under their wing, as opposed to essentially then just saying, well, I really like what you've done there, I'm going to go away and create my own version of that. So as I say, it's layered, it takes time, but we can get people to real clarity quite quickly. And I'll often say bullshit quite a lot, and so I'll be like, that's utter shite, that's bullshit, no, I don't believe that, is that true, what's happening there, and do you need to go for a pee? So that's where we'll get to.
Yeah, totally. Listen, I know the pee thing. You sit here like 4 hours. I've needed the toilet for like 4 hours. Why have I not actually gone to the toilet? But now, because I'm working from home, I've got 2 cats, 2 children, and a Bob. I'll hide in the toilet with a cup of tea. I'm still forgetting actually. So totally the same. So when Mark Logan, we interviewed Mark Logan a couple of weeks ago, and he talked in a very similar way around, in 5 years' time. When you look back, will your future self be proud of the actions and the work that you did today and now, especially at a time where we feel that, and I feel quite strongly about this, this is the time to step it up, and that's probably language that gets me motivated, as a personal thing around, this is the time to, I've been trying to convince people for many years about a particular approach and a particular way to do it. So if we're going to prove it, now's the time to prove it. And the environment, as challenging as it is, should allow us to do that. And people that, and I find that people need permission to be able to take those steps. But I don't know what the future is going to look like. But, like last year, we didn't know what the future was going to look like. So even though we had plans last year, there was no certainty that those plans were going to come to fruition, and it's the same now. But we need new plans. What do you think the future is going to look like? How do we start to cultivate and to think about the way we're going to have to navigate this? I think we need to be more human than we've ever been. We need to be more self-aware than we've ever been. We need to be more caring and thoughtful than we've ever been. But some people have been so trained out of that emotion that they're grieving for those bits rather than the actual situation. So it's a kind of double-ended question, Gail, around grief and future and the journey between the two.
Well, I think for me, what I feel as well with grief, and certainly I sit with families all the time, who are grieving and who are experiencing grief, and indeed people and on their own when it comes to kind of co-creating their life, is that it's a very simple question. Are you facing reality, which is what kind of pre-2020 would be, or are you co-creating your reality, which is what 2020 plus would be? So again, this without it just sounding like a sweeping statement, but there's no reason necessarily to don't wait for it, create it. In fact, I would say I hope more things fail for you than have ever failed before, because it means you'll be trying things, and that's fantastic and really, really important. I hope you find lots of ways how not to do things. I think that's really important too, so that you find great ways that things do work. I think with grief as well, there is a real opportunity in allowing for anything that is in our body or our systems which just does feel weighty or doesn't feel like us. Again, I spoke a wee bit earlier, you often get a lot of tension in the jaw. Grief we shove up underneath our shoulder blades. So if there's anything clicky clacky that's going on, basically get a bag of tennis balls and roll around on them on your floor. You will hate me for it, but you will feel a lot better for it as well. You can be like, that bloody Reverend, what was she talking about? There's a real opportunity as well in terms of us recognizing, again, it will never be done. And when we're destination and addiction addicted, we're constantly working towards something, and that, you know, that is important, but equally the only thing that does exist is right now. The only thing is this moment. We can't you can predict your future if you are co-creating from a place of deep consciousness and profound connection, which takes practice. Ultimately, it all takes practice. If you keep thinking the same things over and over, you keep experiencing the same things over and over. Whereas if you're choosing better feeling thoughts, if you're moving through the emotional scale, if you're experimenting, exploring and thinking, God, you know, there is this thing that's not leaving me, or actually all these things I'm doing, this just doesn't feel like it is the thing that I want to do anymore, or more than ever, I'm definitely in the right place and I'm doing the right thing. I mean, I'm completely with you. I was born for this. International crisis. Let me step forward. How fantastic. So, you know, again, for me, but that's also my choice, because that's how I like to feel. I like to feel like I'm in service, but not in servitude. Now, in terms of the next 5 years, I think we're already seeing some really interesting things. You know, we're certainly seeing you know, there is as much money, if not more money, in circulation. There's 275 trillion pounds in paper and jingle in circulation just on its own. You know, we're seeing assets growing. The stock markets are extraordinary. Microsoft, Apple, Marvel Technologies are all Microsoft, because it is essentially Bill Gates' energy, and Bill has been completely anticipating this global pandemic for 10 years. You know, actually his physical energy, you know, is so we're seeing agriculture change, we're seeing circular living really become what we've always wanted to be since pre-civilization, when we worked harmoniously again with our environment, with people. We're seeing communities come together in a really interesting way. We're seeing original diversification and biodiversity as it was intended around the 90s also coming into production. We're seeing fashion reduce, we're seeing landfill reduce. It's Earth Day today, but actually nobody is who's shopping. You know what I mean? It's like I was in Morrison's yesterday and I had bought those roses, and I said to the woman, I was like, I'm not, like, what else are you spending your money on? And she was like, do you have more money? And so we had this whole conversation at the checkout. She was like, yeah. She said, we're all less stressed. She said, work is really peaceful. She was like, all the customers are really patient and gentle. She said, and everything's fully stocked. And she was like, I hope it never changes. And I was like, that's it. That's the future we're co-creating. I love you. And, you know, I just thought she was amazing. So I think there's also, I think there is also this idea again about we're being kind of looking at what do we really need, what does bring us joy, what's satisfying, what's dissatisfying. So, you know, I think by 2025, for me, we could genuinely live in like the Bill and Ted's Most Excellent Adventure, you know, when they're like all living in harmony, strumming their guitars, and it's like, most excellent, man. There's a bit of the surfer dudette in me that's like, this is possible. We could totally co-create this amazing world. And then I am also at the same time very, very clear that the flip side of what we're seeing at the moment is, if people are living in smaller spaces, you know, domestic violence has increased, murder has increased. There's totally an underground thing that's going on, which I don't have any access to, but like I know it's happening. Underground clubs, you know, way things are moving, how people are moving. There's all sorts of things, you know, the dark net is definitely busier. There's, you know, again, there's all these things that are happening. But again, this is the truth that we each do live in our own reality. So trying to influence people to live in a similar reality to yours is always going to be very tricky, because your point of view is your point of view. So I think, you know, allow some time, some space. I often teach about this idea of sipping. Sip on what is present for you. You don't have to gulp it or binge on it. Just sip, again, cups of tea, staring out of windows, softening, savoring. Maybe you want to start, if you don't have already, a small meditation practice, a quality of 5 to 10 minutes, just sitting in quiet, but focus on the noise around you, the buzzing of something, the birds. Keep it simple, keep it easy. You know, if you notice yourself efforting, why? Where are you trying to get to? What are you trying to do? How quick you got to get there? You know, like, again, sit back. This I've got this enormous opportunity as well, where choice overwhelm is being rapidly reduced, you know, overproductivity is being rapidly reduced. You know, again, the idea of celebrity billionaire is the false idols being dissolved. You know, what's fantastic about coronavirus in a way is like, it does not care who hosts it. It's just like, you look great, I'm coming in, thanks. You know, so it doesn't matter how much there's in the bank, or, you know, how many platinum albums you've got of any of these things. It's very leveling. It's a very, very leveling experience. And again, I think as well, as we spoke about the other day, we're going to have a massive baby boom. We're going to have a massive marriage boom. I don't know what I'm going to do next spring, summer. Good God, no supplier is going to, employment is going to rocket. It's going to be extraordinary, but in all sorts of different fields, you know. And we are seeing, you know, end of life and death is coming around differently. We will also have a conscious or unconscious coupling / divorce increase as well, without a shadow of a doubt. And I say thank God to that, because actually, don't spend the rest of your life unhappy. Don't do anything that makes you unhappy, that pulls you out of who you are. You know, again, from where I come from, you're advocating your best influence. We're all cutting, you know, leading edge co-creators. So what are you co-creating? How good does it feel? Does it feel light? Does it feel heavy? You know, quality experience, different conversations with politicians, you know, artistry, shared spaces coming back in a way that we haven't seen before. And you know, balance and harmony across all areas of life, when we're no longer skimming the surface, but we've really dropped in to quite a heart-led, and Brené Brown will talk about it like strong back, soft front, you know, that really, again, just allowing this very, very interesting evolution, you know, that is happening to our species. And, you know, children will only remember it as the time that their parents were at home. You know, they will only remember it as the time that they could do whatever they wanted. You know, it's like people will remember when they softened, and when they, you know, and learned to cook and make bread and knit and create and be artists. I mean, there's really, and yes, we will lose some of our universal family. You know, we will lose some of our species. It was inevitable. It is inevitable. But again, our invitation is to live the fullest life with the greatest joy, just knowing that there are no guarantees, and certainty is a lovely word, but actually comfort with uncertainty can be very, very supportive as well.
Brilliant. I totally agree. I agree with all of that, Gail, in a very passionate way. I think I would add to that, though, and it's something I'm very aware of. So I live and work in the East End of Glasgow, and everything you've described, absolutely. And I'm fortunate that I have the choice and the privilege to be able to create that for myself. But there are communities, and there are people that are around me in the world that I live in, work in, and have done for many years in a social space, that still don't have that choice. So I think as we're co-creating that, we still have to be mindful that we are in a privileged position of choice, and do what we can to challenge the structures that hold those people back. I'm all for a quiet revolution in the next 5 years around restructuring things. The boring revolution, nobody ever wants to talk about, and actually something that people never think that I want to talk about, but secretly, as I'm sneaking my way through everything, it's the structural revolution that I'm looking forward to, where we start to see the dissolve of big structures and big bureaucracies, so we can sneak in and be creative and entrepreneurial and really support children and young people that don't have the opportunities I have the choice of. I'm very, very conscious of that. So it's an exciting time. It's an exciting time. My mum said last year to me that her goal for 2020 was to get arrested doing the right thing. And she's up to all sorts. She lives in the country. I mean, God love her, right? She lives in the countryside, 4 hours away, and she's trying to get like one police officer. Poor person's like, I'm like, how high are you? Now she's really like, oh, hold on a minute. I can't get arrested now. And if I do get arrested, I'm getting arrested for leaving my house, and that's utterly boring, because that's not my whole point. So what can I break? You know, what is it that I can break? There's been a question that I'm gonna lead into from this. So my mum is a genealogist, And she's been talking about people's legacies and people's stories. And so she's been on at me to say, well, what is your legacy going to be? So if we're doing your family tree and you know, however many generations time, well, the generations look back and say, oh, Granny Rachel, she was mental. She did this, this, and this, you know. I mean, how excited do you get when you realise there's a pirate in your family tree? So it's like, so what is our, you know, what is our pirate legacy going to be? But in order to do that, you know, we need to kind of better understand our emotions. And there's been a question that's asked around, you talk about the scale of those emotions. Because I think all of us are going, here's the North Star, we can see it and we can feel it, and there's a big sort of journey on the way, and that's amazing. We've got the map. The terrain is new, but we've got the map. But in order to do that, we do need to kind of balance understanding the scale of our emotions. And I'm quite happy actually being angry, because I know how to manage it. And when I'm raging about something, and I'll be like, I've got the rage today, don't come anywhere near me, because it'll all be bad. But I'm not happy with grief, because it affects me physically and I can't control it. I can control my anger, because actually it's short-lived. But I'm not okay with my grief. My grief takes over in a way that makes me ugly cry, and I'm in control of myself, so I find ugly crying difficult. So how do we get an understanding of the scale, and how do we even know?
Well, the first thing I would say is just bin the bullshit that you've got control over anything, number one.
I don't.
For all of us, yeah.
It's an illusion. It's absolutely an illusion. I feel myself. Yeah.
And I think as well, like, grief is a door to peace. You know, grief is a door to peace, and I think that's really important. It's lovely. There's a few deep inhales and exhales then, and actually, what an amazing opportunity that you can just have a big ugly cry, and then you feel so much better in a way that nothing else can allow. You know, we're frightened of grief because we think it's about, we complicate it. We think it's about the memory of something. We think it's about something that we won't have again. It's like we lament for the not having. We go into wanting, like deep sort of wanting, which is very different from acknowledging and desiring. So we can feel grief and absolutely allow it. And one of my top tips, by the way, is when you do cry, open your mouth. It sounds completely counterintuitive, but we crunch everything up and then we're like, I'm not going to do it. And most of the people that I work with, they will cry in session at some point. That's nothing to be terrified of, by the way. That sounds, you know, but I'll just say to them, like, open your mouth. And what it means is you'll start to breathe somewhere differently. You'll give the throat and the larynx space. You'll give the lungs and the diaphragm space. And so it allows us, we're not trained in the West particularly, we're not trained in grieving. There are many cultures who are fantastic at grieving, and there are many places in the world where you know, I've witnessed things, but we have a thing that's known as keening, you know, which we used to have, and keening is coming back, and it is the wailing of the passing and the wailing of grief. And in Scotland and Ireland, you used to employ keeners. So a woman would come to your house and we talk about it, it sounds a bit fairy tale-ish, but she would take your grief and wail and cry it for you, so the family didn't have to. The keeners became bastardized as the banshees in old mythical writing, so just this screaming, unkept woman. And that is also part of the hangover of why we don't like to show grief or emotion, because we have these which are oppressive. They are both patriarchal and matriarchally oppressive, actually, in their standpoint. So we think grief should look like something, or it shouldn't look like something. But in the allowing of it, what you'll discover is that your grief is access to peace. It's also access to sleep. You'll rest in a way you've never rested before. Shit will move around your body the way it's never moved before. You will become clearer. And so again, grief can be very beautiful and often lasts a small amount of time when you allow it. You know, and again, when you're moving through the emotional scale, and there is a wee video that you can watch which explains this a bit more. But you know, there is a sense that if I'm depressed, disconnected, or feeling a complete lack of joy, it's also because I've moved into an area of by me consciousness. I think either everything is happening to me, or I think everything is up to me. So it's all up to me. So I'm going to be very stiff in the shoulders and tight in the jaw, and I'm going to be, you're not going to see any of these things. Whereas when you're moving through the emotional scale, and again, it's just that certain emotions are, I would say, heavier or lighter than other emotions. And just again, simply recognizing what you're feeling. And if you are feeling what you think you're feeling, one of my greatest pleasures is really helping people to understand whether they are feeling what they think they're feeling, or they're just so used to saying it's this, that, and the next thing. Whereas it could be something much, much softer, but they've just never named it. And so we get to name everything, describe everything, find it in the body, attune to it, understand it, have a relationship with it, get to know it. And what happens when we get to know those parts of ourselves, it's like a wee Russian doll. We can bring all those parts of us back in. We listen less to the inner critic, more to the inner being. You're focusing on what is, instead of like what's absent, what's present. Where is my focus? Where is not my focus? Am I dissatisfied? Am I satisfied? And so again, I'm very emotional, but I'm not sentimental. I've just, oh God, I rage through like emotions all day, every day. And I'll be like, this is amazing, because I feel alive and I have an understanding of them. Really, really important. I have my Italian moments as well, when just nothing, everything goes out the window. But again, it lasts for about 10 minutes. And then I'm like that, okay, let's choose something else. So again, there's a way for us to find, we would hear it in a lot of coaching or self-help. It might be like what feels right, what feels wrong, but it's too surface. So again, am I satisfied? Am I dissatisfied? What am I feeling? Again, disconnection, grief, sadness is again about that. We think things are happening to us or by us. And then doubt is just an amazing bit of intel. If you're feeling doubt, fantastic. Like, ask it why. Like, what's the fear that you have because something isn't in place? If you're feeling doubt, it's an amazing piece of intel that's coming from your gut, and it's saying, whoa, hang on. We've had a similar situation like this, and we didn't have that thing in place. Could we have that in place now? Because that's going to start to actually make me feel a bit more confident about that. Amazing. And that will start to move you up to a place of optimism, creativity, and again, top of the emotional scale, joy, bliss, appreciation, a greater vibration than gratitude, moving from a place of not having to having, not knowing to knowing. So it's just this wonderful kind of, just this rainbow of exploration that opens up. And again, now, every day, any day, just a wonderful, wonderful opportunity to connect into that and see, so when somebody says to you how you're feeling, you can be like, well, let me just check my scale. And you'll never say you're feeling okay again, because you'll really be able to articulate. And when you can articulate what you are feeling, that is giving you more power than 95% of the people on the planet are accessing. And trust me, things will change for the better.
Amazing, Gail. Thank you so much. Gail is a founding member of the Creative Entrepreneurs Club, and so we have resources of Gail up on the site. There's 2 meditations, and there's other resources there that you can access and be connected into. But I just want to say thank you so much. That a couple of years ago, I was in Babson a college in Boston, and we did an independent retreat. We were locked in a boathouse for 2 days, and then we got lost in the forest and we had to find each other. And it was a leadership a moment, and actually everything that you were talking about there just brought all of that flooding back to me, because there was something just about reconnecting and checking in, because ultimately this all leads to the contribution that you make and the contribution that you're able to make. So and there's some funny stories about what other people did in the woods, but that's not fun. We might come back to that when we get together again in June. But I just want to say a huge thank you, Gail. It's been incredibly
a pleasure.
We're going to be doing this every Wednesday at 11 o'clock. Lots of different people coming in. We're going to have a tax specialist who's going to make tax and finance fun and sexy. We've got our children next week. We've also, My little girl who's 8 is already planning that session. So we're going to have lots of bite-sized chunks. So hopefully this is a little bit different from the other content that is going on.
Amazing.
These are also about relationships. So please, through Creative Entrepreneurs Club, connect in with us, chat to us, be part of the journey. If we can support and help in any which way we can, we will. And if we can't, we will definitely find somebody who can. But once again, thank you, Gail. Any final words that we can take off as we ride into the sunset and a new understanding of ourselves?
I love that. I would say if you want more, pop over to Instagram. I deliver daily medicine there, which is Gail_Love-Schock, and Schock is SCHOCK. My name is my website, and all I would say is there is an invitation to make your happiness and feeling good your highest priority. So that is, for me, feeling good is my highest priority. And my second thing would be, think of your most favorite person on the planet that you would do anything and everything for, with the most delicious ease and grace, and treat yourself like that.
Thank you. Perfect. Thank you. Yes, indeed, Jackie. Thank you so much, everybody. It's been lovely to see you, and hopefully we'll see you again next week at 11 o'clock with a cuppa. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.